What's going on, everyone? Welcome in here to the Forward Progress YouTube channel. It's a Week 8 recap, Week 9 look ahead right here, part of the Hammer Betting Network, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola, joined as always on Sunday nights by Clive Bixby. Clive, how's it going?
What's going on? How's everyone doing?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what the chat, how the chat made out today. I personally, when I do the figures at the end of the day, it's either going to be a small win or a small loss somewhere in there. I honestly don't know. Made some horrible bets, made some great bets, and then as usual, a lot of coin flips that either like worked out or didn't. Some good, interesting end game stuff today. Let's just put it that way. For those who are new here, haven't seen the show before, we'll talk a little bit about today's games, recap them. Pinnacle will be going live shortly with their odds for Week 9 in the NFL. Once those are posted, we'll bring them up on screen. We'll talk through each of those games one by one. And then towards the end of the podcast, we will also talk about the games that don't have posted lines as of just yet. So that's the way that things are going to work. If you're not subscribed here on Forward Progress, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that bell notification as well if you want to get alerted of content in the future. And immediately smash that like button down below. Don't do it for me, but do it for my mustache. Smash that like button down below.
It deserves it.
This is like 2.5 weeks of growth right here, people. Please smash that like button. All right. Let's get into it, Clive. Why don't we just start with what we just finished here?
The nightmare that is the Ravens-Cardinals game? Like,
okay,
you want to go there?
So nightmare in what sense for you?
Well, I mean, listen, I had a little bit on the Ravens minus 8.5, but for me, the game was looking like it was going under the whole game. Like, both offenses were pretty inept, and then all of a sudden the fourth quarter happened, and then boom, like just absolutely destroyed. Bad interception by Dobbs on their side of the field. That turns into a touchdown. Couple score lead. Then going back down the other way, touchdown. Like, how many points were in the fourth quarter? It felt like 24.
It felt like that game would not end at any. I was trying to find a spot to eat dinner at some point, and I was just like, please end this game. And then Nelson Agholor came to life. I mean, I believe Nelson Agholor had like a pretty bad drop earlier this year that cost the Ravens a cover. I think he's like 0 for 2 in like coverable plays at this point or another. But it did feel like one of those games as like a neutral party on the side of that game where taking a step back, you could almost feel that was going to come in some capacity because the Mike McDonald and the Ravens went into like this very soft prevent, like they're accustomed to doing in like very early in that fourth quarter. And from there, I mean, it's not necessarily surprising, but I want to pose this question to you. Sure. Because we have our Forward Progress Telegram chat with all of the creators from Forward Progress where this came up. And we also have this in my regular chat with just my closest group of friends that follows football where this came up as well. So I think it's very topical. But it's whether or not the Ravens deserved to cover in the game. So we have had people like in both groups that are on opposite sides of the game. And I think that there's a very valid point. The Ravens had 4.5 yards per play. If I look at like their net yards passing today, it's got to be really low. 138 net yards passing, one of the lowest numbers on the board. Can you say that it was a bad beat when from a box score perspective, there's a very sound argument that they didn't even deserve to win by margin?
So I get that. I'm going to try and see if I can get truly what the stats were before the third quarter, or right when the third quarter ended in yards per play, because even though they were at 4.5 or so, I think Arizona might have been at like 2.9 or 3, like on the nose. And with a couple of turnovers, like I don't think it would be an unreasonable expectation to hold that cover. That's my opinion. I could see both sides to that, but I don't think I wouldn't use that stat as a vacuum to the reason why they didn't deserve to cover.
Got it. I mean, we already have two people split in the current chat right now. I bet Ravens, they did not deserve to cover. Ravens were flat, but still should have covered. For me, it just comes down to like what the probability was late in the game of the Ravens actually covering an 8.5, 9.5, whatever point spread that you got. And for the vast majority of the fourth quarter, it was probably upwards of 90%. So from that perspective, I think people are allowed to feel like hard done by, like the sequence of events that happened for that to happen is just like, it's absurd. Like no one even recovers onside kicks anymore. Like
Right. Nobody recovers onside kicks. They move the ball down. They missed the first field goal. That was
hard.
yeah. And then they come back, they kick, and I mean, it was just such an unbelievable sequence of events to happen to get to that point. I get it. I mean, listen, I think at that point it's way worse than a coin flip if you had the Cardinal side there. But I mean, that's the NFL for you. So congratulations to anybody who ended up covering.
Yeah, I'm sure there's not going to be a lot. There's not going to be very many recap shows today or tomorrow on Monday that are going to lead off with Ravens and Cardinals. But that's how you know that we're bettors, because I'm sure anyone who bet on that game, either they're ecstatic at this point or they're feeling it still at this point because of a deserved, like undeserved cover. Other bets you made today that like I made some idiotic ones. I bet against my own team. I bet the Rams, which by the way,
too.
I'm going to say something again. This is going to sound insane. What I'm about to say is going to sound so nuts that you might ask me to go get my head checked, be like, what the hell is Rob talking about? Okay. The first series of the game, the Cowboys have a 3rd and 11, and CeeDee Lamb's running down the field, and someone in the Rams secondary just passing him off to the next level. Just like,
brushes
them, gets him like in the neck area or whatever. And that's an automatic first down for illegal use of hands to the face. I feel so confidently that if Dallas punted on that drive, we have a completely different game.
No, I agree. I know it does sound insane, but I mean, there were big pressures. I think three of that first series, three plays that first series. And then all of a sudden we go from getting the ball probably around, 35-yard line or so, and to kickstarting that drive, getting 7, and then everything just snowballed from there.
I just like, I know it sounds dumb when you like boil it down to one play that happened on the first series of the game and be like, this completely changed the game. And we'll never know. But it just felt like the Rams defense got off to such a good start. That was going to be a Cowboys punt. Instead, Cowboys go down the field. They convert like every 3rd down on that drive to work down the field as well. Yeah. And I mean, listen, complete bad bet at the end of the day. For not only was it I got a bad number first and foremost. Line moved towards Dallas as the week went on. So bad bet from that perspective. Bad bet in that it never really came close to covering. But it did really feel that one play had such a significant impact on the game.
It felt like after they scored that touchdown that I had no chance anymore. Like, because the defense was so dominant for 4 or 5 plays, whatever it was. I mean, whatever. It happened. So I was on the same side. I had 6.5, bad number. And I had the Panthers today at a good number.
Yep.
And under on the Ravens Cardinals, which I didn't get the best number there early. I bet it early in the week and it moved back up to 45. So depending on where you look, it was either closed 44.5 or 45.
Right. I was with you on the Panthers. I gave that as my best bet on the Wednesday show, which luckily those have been going well this year because those are usually my biggest bets. But I got a not great number early in the week, somewhat better number later in the week, but there was some pretty heavy opposition to the Panthers. I'm going to say this in particular. The handicap, from my perspective, was pretty much completely wrong. Like, I'll take the win, but a lot of why I like the Panthers coming out of the bye had to do with offensive regression, like to the mean, right? So like slight improvement, new play caller, 2 weeks now to prepare for an average defense. The Carolina offense was still very miserable today.
Yeah.
Like they were 3.7 yards per play today. The basic reason that they won, they didn't turn the ball over, for one, and their defense stood on its head and held the Texans to 4.1 yards per play. But Carolina couldn't run the ball at all. 13% success rate running today, 11% success rate on first downs or on early downs. Like that was such a bad handicap that turned out into a winner. But on days like this, like you just gotta take it. Like I had some horrible handicaps today. Between that one, Green Bay, like in hindsight, like what in God's name am I doing betting Jordan Love as a pick'em against just one of those, man.
So I would say did you have a bet that you didn't pull the trigger on that you liked all week and you just didn't do it?
So something, yeah. So like I missed early Saints. That was the one that I missed. And that was like the perfect handicap, which was like, yeah, Indy already depleted secondary, or not a good secondary. They lose Juju Brents last week. We talked about that on the show. I mean, if we rewind to last Sunday night, this is one of the first games we talked about because we go rotation number order usually and how they're posted. And it was the Saints are going to close as favorites. That was exactly what we said on the show last week. It was an early move and it was such a good stylistic matchup for them. But then it moved and you just lost the value. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I'm not going to chase this number type of situation. So that was the regret for me.
For me, it was the Jags. And also the under in the Jets-Giants game, but more the Jags than that. It was those two games. I missed not getting the Bears-Chargers over number that opened at, I think it was 44 when we did the show, and right now it looks like it's probably going to, open at 44. Looks like it's going to close at 46. So kind of regret that too. We'll see how that one goes. But overall, I was surprised that Panthers number ended up where it did. Not surprised on the Saints. We talked about that. And then most of the totals, I think, went the way that we thought they would too. And then the Dallas number obviously is a number that I thought would go more towards 6 than 7. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the bet. So,
yeah,
it was interesting.
I mean, listen, generally speaking, I make a bet because I think I'm going to get a good price on that bet. So Rams was a whiff. Panthers, I mean, I talked about this last week, and as much as I want to credit ourselves, which I will do, like when we get stuff right, I think it's fine to own it, but we should also own when we get stuff wrong. I looked at the Carolina +3 when we were doing the show last week at home to Houston, and I'm like, no, this can't be right. Like Carolina has to take money in this game, and they just didn't. They never did at any point. So completely wrong there. Got the fortunate result. But for the most part today was like a bit of a slog. The one thing that just worked out for me from start to finish where I drew a line in the sand was I'm tossing the Bengals stats from this year. Like I'm just tossing them. Bengals pre-bye does not matter to me at this point. And that was like 100% undoubtedly the right move. Because if you look at the Bengals offense today, it was absurdly good. They had 29 first downs today, like absurdly good offense today against a very good defense. And that was the one thing that I guess I can pick on myself for like some really bad handicaps. That was the one where it worked out.
Yeah. And, it's funny when I hear people say things like, Joe Burrow hurts a team's offense. And like, I don't know what I think people either out of their minds or they say things just for attention and shock value. But I mean, the offense looked really good today.
Oh, they had 39 passes. They were 64% success rate. You're not going to lose games if those are the numbers, but the offense looked insanely good. Scott's given us a recap of last week. So Saints, which we got some good CLV there. Carolina, nope, but a winner. Expect Denver money. Yep. Baltimore, Arizona under. So that one went up, but then got bet back down. And then the Bears Chargers over 44 is like pretty decent
CLV,
number. CLV right now. What do we got going off before game time here on Bears Chargers?
So 46. Yeah.
46. Once we get these games posted at Pinnacle, we'll get into them, into each of them one by one. For the 175 of you watching right now, do me a favor, hit that like button down below. Helps people find our content in real time. Also helps people find this stuff on Monday when they're searching for NFL content. So hit that like button down below. Money piling in on Los Angeles Chargers wouldn't be the first time I've heard that before. There are certain teams that seem to attract money. I mean, Chargers, I guess, are not a consistent one either way, but Chargers are taking money.
I'm not. Feed me says Chargers taking money.
Yeah, I have eyes too.
Yeah, and I'm not shocked that people do not want to necessarily invest on Tyson Bagent, or however you say his name. I still don't know. On the road, second start where he had really good protection last week. Who knows if we're going to see that same thing? Like, his conditions were optimal, and he was still only okay.
I'm pretty open and like upfront with a lot of the stuff, that good bets, bad bets. I'll fill you in on a bet that I made today, which I make every week. Okay. There's a certain offshore site that has some decent teaser numbers. Let's put it that way, especially on 13-point NFL teasers. I tend to play one on a weekly basis. 13-point teaser. They offer good limits. They'll give you a bet on it. And there's like a method to the madness for me. But one of the games, true story, that I teased today was I teased the Jets and Giants total down and played over 22 on the Jets and Giants total.
Way to get home.
And I didn't even remember that and realize it until the end of the day today, when I just logged in to see everything else won in a very easy manner. But I was like, holy shit. And I know I tell people all the time, don't tease totals. That's typically because people play 6 and 7 point teasers. There is some math involved and like a method to the madness here of why I would do something like that. Because especially when you have such a low total like that, it creates more value on a lot of the points. But that game, like, I can't even believe that it's still like that game was an alternate reality. Like, if there was ever a we live in a simulation type of game, it was Giants Jets from today.
I'm like, what happens if he misses this field goal right at the end? I'm like, what happens? Immediately, I think tweeted right after. I'm like, all right, let's see some chaos, because the game sucked. Like, I'm in Jersey, so that's the one game I have on the TV to my right while I'm watching Red Zone and whatever I have up on my laptop. It was horrendous. So, I mean, coaching philosophy, decisions. You're Dable there. Are you kicking there?
I'm actually still in shock that Dable kicked, honestly.
I wouldn't have, but that's me. I'm like, am I missing something? Like, why are you not just running the ball and taking the result?
I'm very surprised that they kicked. In real time, I did not think that they were going to do it. Now, listen, it was rainy and like but the weather was not like unkickable weather.
No.
There's a lot of coaches that would play for that field goal, make the Jets go the field with no timeouts left and score a touchdown when their offense couldn't even, like, their offense was horrendous prior to that today. Like, a disaster. Someone tweeted that Zach Wilson played like a great game today. I don't know what game they were watching. The Jets were 2 of 15 on third down. He was a disaster. And yes, like, a lot of the early down running is a problem for them and whatever. But no. But I am surprised that they, like, I don't like the chicken shit coaching. I really don't.
No.
Like, just play, like, seal the game with your offense. Just seal the game with your offense.
I totally agree. I'm looking to try and find like the fourth down bot for the that play, and I'm not seeing it. Sometimes they get like limited based on the amount of, I guess, tweets that go out or something like that.
Right.
So I don't see it yet, but I'm curious of what the difference in WP was on that.
It had to be. I mean, I think I'm not like the follow the bot on everything it says type of guy. I'm not. I do think that there is like even as a nerdy numbers guy with the glasses and this horrible mustache, I do admit that there is like part of me that still says you have to have like the feel of the game. Right. And I get this, the whole notion of, okay, let's try to kick this field goal, which has got to be a fairly high hit rate, 75, 80%, something like that. But at some point, just run a play that seals the game. Like, I don't know, as a coach, just run a play that seals the game.
I feel like there are many more negative outcomes that come from kicking there than just running the ball and trying to get your first down and icing the game. That's what I think. But I agree with you around, you know, the analytics, feel for the game and things like that, right? Like data gives us a baseline. And then we use what we know about the situations to slightly tweak, right? Like so maybe the fourth down bot gets us 90% of the way there, the same way that, I'll say it for NBA, like it gets me 85 to 90% of where I want to bet. And then the rest is, what are the subjective measures that I want to add on and layer on. That's just the way that it is. So that's where I'm at. It's not, you can't strictly follow it every single time. That's not smart. There are always outliers.
100%. Recreational player, 13-point teasers, he asks in the chat. Yes. So one of the challenges with betting on sports, I did an interview on the Circles Off YouTube channel about a month and a half ago with someone who goes by Shipper, Ship to Justice, used to be a trader for recreational sports books. Check it out. Watch it. It's very interesting. One of the challenges when you're betting into rec books, things of that nature, is keeping your account alive and doing things in the long run that make it look like you are a shitty bettor. So sometimes these are the things that need to be done in order to keep accounts alive. I wish we didn't have to do it. I wish every single sports book could be like Pinnacle, where they don't limit players. You get whatever bet you want. Everyone's treated the same. That's the beauty of having Pinnacle as a sponsor. We never have to deal with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, have to go down sometimes and do some other stuff in order to keep accounts alive. A few other games I want to get to for today, and then we will have these Pinnacle openers trickle in, and we can get into them. KC Denver. What the hell? What the hell?
They just didn't. They looked, terrible, obviously. They also didn't look great the last time that they played either. Had a very hard time, they were able to move the ball last time that they played, but they weren't able to put the ball in the end zone. I'm not completely shocked. When I heard some stats like, this is his first road loss in the division with, I forget what the absolute condition was. But I think he was like 15 or 16-0, I think as a road favorite.
Yeah.
That's so ridiculously unsustainable. Like that's an unbelievable number. I don't think Denver played out of their mind or anything. I just think Mahomes didn't look good today.
Yeah.
Did he have the flu? How sick was he? Like it's so hard for us to know.
It really is. Like for me, this is the exact definition of an outlier game. Honestly, that's not to say it can't happen again next week. They have the Germany game against Miami, but it was like just this perfect storm of things happening, whether it was the flu, it was a million drops again, it was the 5 turnovers, like 2 picks, muffed punt, like just a million things happening. But Christoph brings up a good point in the chat. Denver's D is getting better. Denver's D is like healthy now for the most part. Baron Browning, Josie Jewell back in recent weeks, Justin Simmons. Like it's not the same as earlier. Were they possibly looking past Denver? I've seen situations before where maybe the offense is a little bit more vanilla before a big game. It's not like the Chiefs haven't done this before. So there's like a million things that it could have been. I'm just not entirely sure what it was, but I don't think it was anything like that I would take away from that game and be like, this is like something we really have to worry about with the Chiefs going forwards.
I can't tell you that there's many times where I've seen the Chiefs EPA box score, so to speak, right? And it's all in the negative, like every situation. It I probably look at it as an outlier. I give some credit to the Broncos defense. They have improved over the last few weeks. 100% agree with that. Um, just I think this is one of those, tail type of games for Mahomes and the offense. And, somebody said, I saw it on Twitter earlier. I forget who it was. This might be the worst wide receiver room in the league.
Maybe Carolina might raise some questions there. Carolina would be the one that comes to mind that could immediately give them a run for their money. But yeah,
Point is, they're in
their
their conversation. Yeah,
yes.
they are in the conversation, and you just don't expect that. And as well as the Chiefs have played with that scenario and just relying so much on Travis Kelce, it's actually kind of impressive how I think fluid the offense has been.
Yep, I would agree with that. All right, with that said, Pinnacle starting to open up right now, so we're going to get to it. As a reminder to everyone out there, or if you're new here, haven't seen the show before, we'll bring up the odds over the course of the program as they roll in. Not every game for next week is going to get posted, and I imagine a lot of them won't get posted due to some quarterback uncertainty. It's a lot of injuries to talk about leading into next week, but we'll give our early opinions on them, just subjective feelings, how we think that they're going to move, where you might be able to find a valuable number over the course of the week. And of course, the beautiful thing, and I do preach this on a weekly basis about betting with Pinnacle, is you can go bet these directly into your Pinnacle account right now at very good odds relative to other sports books. You're not going to get limited. They're not going to flag your account and be like, this guy's a sharp bettor, let's lower his limits, like a lot of other sports books will do. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for the past 25 years. If you are going to sign up to Pinnacle in Ontario, use code HAMMER when signing up, as it does help support the show. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. And as always, please play responsibly. And of course, before we get into it, hammer that like down below as well. Takes 2 seconds. Give the thumbs up. Thursday night football. When I agreed to do these Thursday night football and Monday night football live watch-alongs prior to the season, I was not expecting the schedule that we have received so far this year. Thursday night football is the Pittsburgh Steelers at home to the Tennessee Titans. Market in this game right now, Steelers -2.5, -115. The total is 36 in the game. So Steelers -2.5, -15. The total is 36. Couple things of note. Obviously, Pittsburgh dealing with some injuries. Kenny Pickett had to leave the game. Mitch Trubisky came in for him. The fact that there's a line open right now tells you all you need to know about whether or not there's a downgrade. Basically, Sportsbook's not scared to post a number, even not knowing whether it's going to be Pickett or Trubisky. Basically interchangeable. Also a big injury for the Steelers. Minkah Fitzpatrick got injured. Pulled his hamstring.
Went down.
Yeah, it was like a non-contact injury. Immediately grabbed it. Looks like it's probably a multi-week type of thing in this one. Will Levis today had a very good stat line, Clive.
Yeah.
From what I caught of the game, which wasn't much, he was throwing the ball downfield with some precision. DeAndre Hopkins was throwing defensive backs out of the way, like AJ Terrell on the first touchdown. It's the DeAndre Hopkins special.
Yeah.
Looked good. Now, that was a home game. This is going to be a road game in Pittsburgh on a short week. Very different story. I don't really know that I want to back either of these teams right now. That total seems awfully low, man.
It does. I'm not a big I just don't see It's such a low number. 36 it's just too low. Even from the stupidity you might see offensively from Mitch Trubisky, like this might be another 13-point teaser for you next week to tease down to 23. And maybe it even goes down to 35 or 35 and a half. I don't know. I don't think so. But this is a super light number. I mean, this is like a 1916 game, roughly, is what they're
Yeah, that's
thinking.
basically the projection on the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, ugh. So Tennessee, great game today. I I haven't loved the Atlanta defense this season. I think they've had a relatively soft schedule of who they've played offensively. So this was one of the games where I think we talked about this last week. We expected the number to go down, especially once it was announced that Tannehill was out.
Yeah. Now, I did not expect Levis to be the starter necessarily. I thought that we were looking at Malik Willis, but that was the discussion last week. Yes.
Yeah, and I think they did say it was going to be Levis, I don't know that it changes all that much. Maybe a half a point. I don't think it would have been all that different. I know Malik Willis is horrid. Um, but I mean, this number is a little too light, even for a Thursday night game, and the quarterback situations. So I kind of think this goes to 36 and a half or 37. Probably not much more than that, but I think this number is a little light, unless there's some weather that I don't know about.
From the chat, it seems like there's some interest in the Steelers. And there's one thing about like looking at the Titans box score today that is apparent. One is that they were able to run the ball very effectively. So running game working against Atlanta, that took a lot of pressure off Levis. The second thing I would say was there was a lot of boomer bust with Will Levis because his success rate was actually lower than the opposite side of things with the Atlanta Falcons. But EPA wise, some big plays led to some scores. Did Ritter get injured? He went into concussion protocol, cleared it, but then was chosen to like not come back into the game. So that was the situation there. But I don't really know what this market is going to be like. I find it extremely difficult to value Pittsburgh post bye week because you have all of this stuff pre bye week without Deontay Johnson. And I think it probably deflates their offense a little bit. But with that said, they don't have a ton of offense regardless. So I think it's just like sit and wait with this game. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another.
Yeah, I do kind of think this would be a tough matchup defensively. I mean, Fitzpatrick's out. I know that hurts a little bit. Um, I have a hard time. I don't think this is going to go towards Tennessee personally. I mean, I have to watch more of the game today and what it looked like, but it looked like Levis made a lot of good throws, but it didn't seem like they were very not challenging throws, but it's not like he seemed like he was thrown into a ton of tight windows. He had DeAndre Hopkins off open pretty significantly on a lot of his throws that were those big plays,
Right.
minus, I think the first touchdown, if I got that right.
Yep.
So this is a wait and see.
Yep. All right, let's move into the Sunday games. And we'll start with what's being posted early, and then we'll decide afterwards, and we'll talk about the games that don't have lines up as of yet. Again, another game with a quarterback injury situation. We got the Vikings heading out on the road to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, before we even get into this game, Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles today. I've already seen on Twitter calls for the Vikings to go out and get a quarterback in this upcoming week. Tuesday is the trade deadline in the NFL. But because the NFC is so wide open and the Vikings defense is playing so much better, there is a call for them to go out and find a quarterback. I think that is the absolute worst thing that the Vikings franchise can do. Sometimes your starting quarterback gets injured and you just got to accept the L. You just got to take the L. And that's what the Vikings need to do. Sell everyone. Daniil Hunter, see you later. Get out of town. Yeah. Like you have a franchise left tackle. You have a good coaching staff. Just get picks. Yeah. Like you're not going to, what quarterback on the market are you going to acquire that is going to make the Vikings a Super Bowl contender? The answer is nobody. Sometimes you just take the L and move on. Kirk Cousins goes into free agency. Hate to see his Vikings career end like that, but do not make a trade.
No, who could you even empty the clip for, hypothetically? Who?
Taylor Heineke would have been a guy that I would have said beforehand that like might be an option. But who's the backup for the Andy Dalton is out there. Like, but again, like these are guys that you're just not going to win with anyways. So what's the point? What's the point? Like you might as well just accept that it is what it is. I'm not saying you go out and you actively tank, whatever, play to win games, but do not give up assets to acquire a rental in a year that you're not going to win a Super Bowl. That makes absolutely no sense to me. No sense to me.
None. Bring in Carson Wentz or bring in Nick Foles just for fun, and just let the season go. Trade any chips that you have for draft picks and move on.
Does San Fran give up Darnold? Who cares? Why would they want Darnold? Right. Darnold sucks. He's always sucked his entire career. Honestly, Cottage is right. Like Nick Mullins is on IR. He can't play next week. But Nick Mullins, they're better off just running Nick Mullins out there. He knows the offense. He's been a decent success rate quarterback in his career. He's a good backup. You're just better off doing that than trying to acquire some sort of bum. Anyways, market in this game for next week. Atlanta -4 at home, which already, like thinking about Atlanta laying 4 makes me want to have, like, I get queasy just thinking about it. And the total is 38. Is this not going to get bet down, the total? Like, I would just assume you have Jaron Hall, 5th round rookie out of BYU, starting a road game. The likelihood that this gets bet down has to be pretty high. No?
I think so. To the point that we just made, this is a game that I would not bet till after the trade deadline, depending on, who's going to still be around. But this feels more like 36.5 to me than like 38, maybe 37. But I don't understand 38 right now. Not with the way that the league's playing and everything, the entire situation. No. Not at all. And 4, I can't take Atlanta giving 4 either. Like, I just want to wash my hands of the game for now.
I do have like an innate desire to bet backups in their first game a lot of times, because that's kind of been an underrated spot for many years, but the backups nowadays suck. I don't know what happened to backup quarterbacks in the league, but it's not like it was 10 years ago. It's different. Look at around the league. Like, so many of these guys playing are absolute dog shit. My gut feel on how this will work, whether or not you want to bet it, completely up to you. But my gut feel is that this is just going to be a play against Minnesota in the early week. Atlanta takes early money. Minnesota takes late money. It's pretty similar to the situation that we saw with the Titans and the Falcons today, in my opinion, where you get someone betting out ahead of this. I mean, it's known. It's not like it's not unknown. That's what's surprising. But somebody's going to bet out ahead of it, and then it comes back. I don't have a strong opinion here, Clive. Almost zero. Other than I think that subjectively a total of 38 with the Falcons offense, regardless of who's at quarterback, plus a 5th round rookie seems a little bit high.
It's excessive.
Yeah.
It's very excessive.
Connor says BetStamp shows a Pinnacle line for the Germany game. We saving the best for last? We're not. I'm going top to bottom rotation number order. It hadn't opened just yet, but that's where we're going right now, to Germany. Our fellow Forward Progress member Suma will be in attendance at the game. It's the Kansas City Chiefs hosting in quotations, the Miami Dolphins. Spread right now in the game Kansas City laying 2.5. The total is 50.5. I feel like that total, again, maybe you guys can let me know in the chat what the look ahead was. I feel like if they had played this game this week in Germany, the total would have been on the other side of 51.
Yeah. And I think this gets bet down.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me to know exactly how far down, but and it's not just because the way Kansas City played against Denver either. It's been Kansas City's offense all year. And I mean, their defense wasn't god awful today. Like, it wasn't. I think, Miami, New England today closed at what, 47, 46 and a half, something like that.
Yeah, 47-ish, I think.
This feels like 49 and a half to me, but that's just, gut feel.
I agree with you. I also think about like the way that I think Kansas City will play the Miami, which is don't give up the big play. Now, easier said than done when you have guys like Tyreek Hill who are just like blowing by players on the other team. So, whatever. I could say don't give up the big play, but that's how I think that they will play them. Again, we have a couple points of Miami playing up in class, but not only playing up in class, but playing up in class against good defensive lines, which I think the Chiefs have right now. George Karlaftis was like all over it today. And those types of teams have been giving the Dolphins trouble offensively. Personally, I'm likely going to have interest in betting Kansas City in this game. I don't know if it's going to be shared market interest in betting Kansas City. I think this is like a split action type of game. You get to 3. Like, I don't see this going north of 3, basically.
No, probably not. And I would not be surprised if this just bounces between 2 and 2.5 all week. What I think about the game plan of what Kansas City's probably going to do, I mean, they're not big shot takers down the field, but I think Miami's going to have a hard time getting off the field. So when that happens, the clock's going to continue to move. I don't know that Kansas City's always going to get into the end zone. It's just not going to be a very easy. I think it might be easier to move the ball. They might have high success rate, but I don't expect a ton of explosive plays. And Miami didn't look particularly great against the Eagles last week. And I mean, where do you have the Chiefs defense compared to the Eagles?
Different style of defense, obviously.
Yeah.
But really quickly, I'll pull up. I wasn't able to rerun numbers with today's metrics included, but I had the Chiefs defense 4th in the league going into today, and I had the Eagles defense 7th.
Yeah, so near the same tier.
Yeah.
Yeah, this feels like a tough game to, expect a 51 point or plus game.
I'm with you. I like KC in the under, at least for like early money. Although I've gotten a lot of Miami games wrong this year, so just for full disclosure, that's been the case pretty consistently with me. But yeah, we also do have we have to upgrade Miami's defense as Jalen Ramsey gets more and more reps, because that was a significant area of weakness for them. The injury today to Robert Hunt on the offensive line doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. Looks like he was just like held out as a precaution with a big game on deck next week. But man, Mahomes minus 2.5, like you don't really want to boil it down to that. But when you just need Mahomes to win a game, that's awfully appealing.
It is.
It's awfully appealing.
I mean, and I think we ran this exercise this week or last week rather. Points per game for the Chiefs, 20, 17, 41 against the Bears, 23, 27, 19, 31, 9. Not putting up those big 28 4-touchdown plus games.
No, but the end, like with the exception of Miami in the NFL, not a lot of teams are.
Right, like this is the first week. I think it was 8-4 to the over today. I think first week anything like that.
the way that teams play defense is like fundamentally changed. It's prevent the explosive play. That's modern day defense in the NFL.
Yeah, don't
Prevent
let them
the
get past
explosive
you.
play.
Yeah.
Keep everything in front, make them make 3 consecutive good plays and have them score in the red zone.
Pretty much. I completely agree with that. But it's going to be a fun game to watch. Like, that's better than the London games we've been treated to so far this year.
Be very interesting. Alvaro brings up a good point for the travel for Kansas City. It's not exactly the greatest either.
No.
Altitude in Denver. They're going to go fly back home. They don't make this trip often. Could be interesting to see if there's a factor there. I actually didn't even really think of that, but that's worth noting as well.
Jason
all right,
put some good info in the chat too about. I forgot Dolphins had another offensive line injury today, didn't they?
Yeah, it was Hunt, but I read that they just kept them out as like a precaution, basically.
Oh, okay.
Like the game was out of hand type of situation. It was the other side. It was New England that had the significant injuries, in my opinion, in that game, which we'll talk about when that comes up. All right, this will be an interesting game, or at least it should be. Interconference game. It's the Ravens, fresh off of blowing a cover late in game. Returning home to host the Seattle Seahawks. The spread in this game is 5.5. The total 43.5. Okay. Subjectively, first gut instinct is that the number is a little bit too high. This is not. It's not like a detraction. I love the Ravens. They are inclined to have games like they have today, where it kind of seems like they're sleepwalking through it sometimes, but subjectively feels a little bit too high. The big thing for me that I have to look into, specifically, we saw this again today with Seattle. Geno has very, very drastic splits against zone and man. From what I remember, the Ravens have played a lot of man this year. That's been the defense that has given him a lot of problems. That's the defense that Cleveland played today, where after the scripted drives at the beginning, he could do nothing until the end of the game. So that is going to play into it. But I mean, we're kind of in dead man's land is the problem at 5.5, right? Like the 5 is not super valuable. So what do we do?
Yeah, and I'd like to go back and watch the Seattle Cleveland game and just see what that pressure rate looked like, because it seemed like Cleveland was kind of getting home a lot, or at least putting a lot of pressure on Geno Smith. I don't know that Baltimore has that same level of defensive line. I think they have a good overall defense. It's not a bad overall defense, but I just don't know that they're going to be able to put the same pressure on Geno. The number does feel high at 5.5. Instinctively, 4.5 feels better to me. Again, we are kind of in a dead zone, but I don't upgrade the Ravens or downgrade them all that much off today. So what would I have had the number at today before? Probably 4.5 or 5. So it's not far off what I would have had.
Yeah, I think the challenge I have, like in situations like this, personally, are say you like the Seahawks in the game, right? It's like opportunity cost. If the spread's 5.5 and it drops to 5 or 4.5, you didn't really lose much.
True.
If it goes to 6, you've gained substantially in your ability to get that 6, right? So it's like where the line is right now. I don't think you need to even though I think when I run numbers on this game, I'll personally will be in the 4.5 range, unless there's something I'm missing from a stylistic perspective. But it feels like there's no need to run and grab that
number. No. There's not enough gained by getting that half a point or a point, to your point. Yeah.
Okay, let's move it along. Arizona and Cleveland. In the chat, does anyone know, I'll get into the market first. Let's get into the market, and then we'll talk through it. Cleveland's laying 7.5 at home, 7.5 plus 100. The total is 39.5. What I wanted to get into was Kyler Murray and the possibility of him possibly starting in this game against the Cleveland Browns. Because there's a couple things that immediately come to my head. I would love to fade Kyler Murray after a long layoff, and I believe he's going to play next week. Oh, they already said Dobbs is playing week 9. Okay. I see. Yeah, Dobbs is starting week 9. I just said,
Okay.
So see it now. Okay, so we know it's a Dobbs game. That's huge. Okay. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for letting us know. If it was Kyler, the only reason I was going to say this is because Cleveland plays a ton of man. They're the highest man coverage scheme in the league. Quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, with their legs, can destroy man coverages.
Yeah, they extend drives, yes, etc.
Right. So it's Dobbs. That makes this game extremely unappealing to me because I don't want to lay a big price with PJ Walker. And Arizona to me is like a dead team now. They're in the dead. I know they covered today, but this is now how many weeks in a row where it's horrendous for them, right? Like Baltimore this week, last week Seattle, they managed 10 points. The week before was the Rams, Bengals prior to that. Like the wheels have come off Arizona at this point.
So here's the funny thing. Not funny. It's not funny. I look at the total. Seems high.
I mean, I got burned on a Cleveland under today, which was all scripted plays basically. And then after that, it was a disaster.
Like
I don't know.
I think if you can get 40.5, take it if it's out there. Maybe it's not out there. What was it on Pinnacle? Was it 40
39.5?
All right, never mind. I see another number. All right, 40's fair. It's just I got to see enough of that Atlanta offense today, and it's really, 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 really bad.
Yeah, Arizona's offense was like the numbers were ugly. Like non-garbage time numbers.
First 3 quarters were like some of the worst EPAs I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, they did lose a turnover margin again. 2 like not great turnovers by Dobbs. He's struggling for sure. I don't know. Like, what is the appetite for people in the market to bet Arizona now? It seems non-existent to me. It really does. It was basically one-way action towards Baltimore today. If you had bet Baltimore today, I don't think there's anything you saw from Arizona that would scare you off of fading them again next week. It's a tough game. I think the number's kind of fine.
Yeah, it feels like teaser territory game for me. And that's it.
Yep. All right. Let's move on here. Tampa Bay Bucks on extra rest go out on the road to the Houston Texans. Number in this game at Pinnacle: Houston -2.5, -114 at home, and the total in the game is 38.5. So we got like a 2.75-ish type of number with the Houston Texans at home. Total in the game 38.5. I was going to say, like, this looks like a horrible schedule next week, but it just dawned on me that most of these teams in the league are brutal.
Terrible. Oh, yeah. The quarterback play this year has been really, really bad. There's not a lot of fun, explosive back and forth games either, right? Like, Minnesota was one of those teams I think that could have like kind of a little bit of a humming offense, and now they're done too. So, like, who's left? Not many teams.
There really aren't. Houston injury news today. Their center, Juice Scruggs is really their center. He's on IR. He's eligible to return, so he might play next week. But their center and playing in place of Juice Scruggs is Jarrett Patterson. He left the game. He was seen in a walking boot after the game. So another significant injury on the Houston offensive line. The one thing, Clive, I've noticed so far this year is the Texans get bet every week. They're getting bet so consistently this year. So there's some originator out there that has a lot of market influence that is pretty high on the Texans, I would say. from like a market rating perspective, I think there's going to be appetite in the Bucks in this
Mm-hmm.
game. The way that these teams have been priced in market this year, the fact that Tampa Bay has extra rest, I think that there's going to be some sort of appetite with Tampa Bay. Although their game with Buffalo was not as close as it seemed. I think that I think if you like Tampa Bay,
Bet them now.
especially if you like them on the money line, you might as well take out the early money line. That's kind of, but every time I say that, like I said this last week against Houston, and then Houston just took one way money. What do you think on the total? What do you think on the total here? 38.5.
I mean, I kind of got into it with somebody on Twitter last couple days about Baker Mayfield, and like somebody was saying how much of a victim of drops he was this last week, and he's making all these great throws. I don't see it. I mean, I see that he's putting some balls where they should, but like in a place where only his guys can catch him. But I certainly didn't come away from that game against the Bills and say, "Wow, Baker looked really good." He got robbed of like some significant, points and yards. Did you? Like, am I missing something there?
No,
I think
I
he's
don't
been
think
bad the
so.
last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is he didn't turn the ball over against Buffalo, which is a plus for them. But they only had one red zone trip for the entire game. It's not like they moved the ball successfully at all. Houston's offense really struggled today as well. I honestly don't like. I don't know if that was just Carolina's defense or the Houston offense is a little bit uncoordinated. Part of what I noticed with the Houston box score is that they had 10 penalties to Carolina's 3. That might have had something to do with it today, but it seemed like that offense was just stuck in the mud for the entirety of the day. The only challenge I have here is that I think there was a lot of optimism about the Houston offense and has been for the majority of the year. I don't think that necessarily the market is going to get off of that just off of one performance on the road out of a bye week, which has kind of been like a trendy, like stale spot for some teams away from home post bye. I wish I had more strong opinions this week right now, but honestly, some of these numbers, like again, subjectively, gut instinct, I don't feel are way off. I do feel that like most people will look at this game and want to bet Tampa Bay. It's just like, it's two teams that aren't very good. Give me the Bucks. But the market's just constantly moving towards Houston on a weekly basis that it gives me pause.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you really have I mean, coming into this week, Houston and Tampa Bay probably would have most people would have said Tampa's the better team,
Yep.
right? Like
Well,
that's
most people, sure. You can I don't know what most people is.
the market. I'm actually saying the market. So like if you looked at market implied power ratings, Tampa
Yes.
is probably the better team by a point. And here we have a situation where Houston's 2.5 points extra juiced, 2 3/4 at home. That's not consistent. So do you really downgrade Tampa that much off of this week's game? I think you can make a case for it, but then what does that get you to? To the two teams are even? Still 2 3/4 of a point seems two and three
Yeah.
quarter points. Yeah.
No, that's well said because I do agree with pretty much everything there. Maybe it's just more of like me personally having a disdain for Tampa because of the way that they run their offense, which is like,
Run, ineffectively. Third and
you
8.
know, Everett says it in the chat, hard to bet on Bulls. Like I kind of agree. But with that said, even though it was undeserving, they covered last week. Sometimes bad teams cover games. This is just more of like, who do I trust to win more? I mean, I kind of trust Houston's coaching staff. And even though CJ Stroud is a rookie, I kind of trust him more than Baker Mayfield, to be honest. Stroud's been solid this year. I mean, we can say, did we all overreact on CJ? It's possible. It's just, we're dealing with small samples, but EPA wise, success rate wise, he's been pretty consistent across the board until today. So,
I haven't seen the bonehead rookie dumb stuff that you would expect.
yeah,
And I think he's been, like you're saying, very solid. Even today, he wasn't. I mean, if I'm looking at box score numbers, I'm not going to lie to anybody, be transparent. didn't see a lot of the Texans Panthers game today, but I mean, if I'm just looking at, advanced box score metrics, it doesn't seem like he personally looked terrible.
No, I'm gonna watch this a little. I'm gonna watch this in full tomorrow for sure. But yeah, it's just certain teams. So if we go back to last year, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much every week Philadelphia would catch money. Didn't even matter who they played. Somebody's rating on Philadelphia was like way higher than everyone else's, and
true.
that
They
person
moved
was
the market.
influential. Yeah,
Yeah,
a couple
every
years
week.
ago was like everybody was betting against the Bengals every week. It didn't matter who they were playing. You could just expect the Bengals to close at a worse price. So like that's where it's throwing me off this year because again, my gut is telling me that the vast majority of people you talk about implied market ratings, Clive. Like most people, even in this chat here, right? It's like, oh yeah, maybe these are even teams. You give Houston 1.5 points home field, but the market and someone influential in the market, I think, sees this Texans team differently.
Yeah, no, you're right. Somebody does, because it's been, to your point, every single week.
Yep. All right, let's keep it moving here. We got more games to get to. This one is it's an ugly one, but the beautiful thing about betting is we can throw down money to make it a little bit more entertaining. The New England Patriots return home to take on the Washington Commanders. Current market in this game, Patriots minus 2.5, minus 109. Total in the game is 40. Of note today, New England, they got Juju Smith-Schuster back today, but Kendrick Bourne left the game, which with what is expected to be a multi-week injury. Devontae Parker got concussed in this game. Knowing his history with concussions, I find it doubtful that he will end up playing next week. So you're going to have a wide receiver room of Demario Douglas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jalen Reagor, like an ugly wide receiver room, basically. So when I look at this market, Clive, my initial thought is that the under is going to take early money in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, world beater Sam Howell.
Against, by the way, like you said it, I forgot about this angle altogether, but the Belichick against rookies angle that's been talked about for years, that's going to come into play here as well, right? Now,
Yeah.
good point from Arthur. Very good point. Tuesday's the deadline. The Commies defensive line might have some changes. Looks like they're shopping Montez Sweat. There could be some impactful stuff where maybe you don't want to get out and bet this under. But typically speaking, news-wise in the NFL, with the wide receiver injuries for an already dreadful New England offense, who once again had a dreadful performance against not a great defense today. I feel like the under is going to take early money.
Yeah, I think so too. It's kind of like, how can you, in good faith, expect this game to end up, two teams in the 20s, or you know what I mean, like 24, like even 24-17 feels like a stretch. It just feels like a big stretch. I mean, God, terrible success rates, terrible series conversion rate against, like, to your point, right? Like a not all that great Dolphins team. I mean, I like Ramsey too, but this is not like that wasn't a result of that. It was more of just Mac Jones and that offense being completely inept.
If we look at Washington, right? The two games against Philly, Scott says it in the chat. Howell Bieniemy versus Eagles is a different playbook. I don't know what they're doing against Philly that's working, but it works. But and then in between that, you got the game against the Giants, Atlanta, which wasn't very good for that. I know they won, but it was a horrible game for them offensively. Chicago Thursday night. Like, these aren't great teams, and they couldn't move the ball. So my gut is that you take Belichick with slowly gotten healthier on defense. Obviously, they need like a guy like Matthew Judon back, but for him to put a game plan against Sam Howell to shut him down does not seem all that far-fetched to me.
How did the Eagles not get home more today against Sam Howell when everybody else in the league has? And I mean, I saw enough of this game that I didn't think that it was necessarily Sam Howell, all of a sudden changing his game. Like he just had a little bit more, it seemed like from what I saw, he had a little bit more time to throw, and the Eagles just never really got home. Not until the end of the game.
They only sacked him one time.
They sacked him what, the last play of the game?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the last play. I mean, the Commanders' offense was very good today. Statistically speaking, Washington's offense was very good today. I just think that you do have the potential with Washington blowing up their defensive line from the trade deadline. But is like New England going to be the team that's going to exploit that? Like what will New England do to exploit another team blowing up their defensive line? They'll run the ball like a million times, right? That's the extent of the Patriots offense. So, if it's Sweat, it won't be impractical. I mean, it could be Jonathan Allen, could be Chase Young, could be anyone. But I think subjectively, like there's just too much of the narrative or like the analysis is pointing towards the under in this game.
Yeah, totally. New England giving 2.5 points does seem a little tough.
It's like another one of those games where it feels to me like I've had so many of these games this year where it's like they both suck. Just give me the points.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that's the way the market's going to work here, but it does feel like one of those.
We have 3 games this week that are around the 2.5 number with totals 40 or below that I'm looking at quickly.
Yeah.
So teaser territory.
Totally. All right. Let's keep it moving. Indianapolis Colts, off of an embarrassing home showing today against the New Orleans Saints, go out on the road to take on the Carolina Panthers, who won their first game of the season today. Number in this game at Pinnacle, Colts -3 plus 104. Carolina +3 -117, basically. So we have like a 3 that's very close to moving towards a 2.5. Got like a 2.75 number. Total in this game is 45.5. Total is 45.5. Colts and Panthers. I get the Colts are like a massive over team. They play fast. Minshew, agent of chaos. I mean, are the Panthers going to have a game where the total's 45.5? Am I out to lunch here? Like this was the audition for the offense with the new OC coming out of a bye against a mediocre defense. Like I get it. Yeah, Shane Steichen overs is something I hear Lockerson say a lot. But the Panthers offense is dreadful right now to be a total in the mid 40s.
Yeah, we're looking at what, 24-21, something like that. Like that's not really I don't see how Carolina Panther offense gets to 17 a game, let alone 21.
I'm kind of with you. I mean, there wasn't an injury of note today for the Panthers. Justin Houston, I mean, they're already pretty battered on defense. Justin Houston got hurt today as well, so that's going to take one of their edge rushers away. Brian Burns went into the game at 80%, is what the coaching staff said. They're missing Von Bell on defense. Jeremy Chin's on IR. JC Horn's on IR. Shaq Thompson on IR. They're like, it's a beat up defense. But man, I don't know. Like, what's Carolina's peak offensive output, man?
So Seattle. So they scored 27 against Seattle, 24 against Detroit, 21 against Miami, and 15 this week against Houston off of a bye week at home. I mean, I know Indy's defense isn't anything to write home about, but neither is Houston's. Like, what are we going to see? Like, is there something in the matchup that leads us to believe that Carolina will be able to exploit Indy?
So like those Panthers, the Panthers Lions and Panthers Dolphins game. Okay, Panthers Dolphins, they scored 14 points very early, and then it was 7 for the rest of the game. The Panthers Lions game, they basically scored 24 because they were playing come from behind for the entirety of the game. So I think the game state somewhat matters here,
Sure.
where you have a spread of 3. It's expected to be a close game. Frank Reich revenge game has been mentioned a few times, but like, okay, I guess we're gonna get the crazy playbook with the flea flickers and whatever. I don't know. It seems a little bit high to me. It really
It
does.
does. I don't see how Carolina exploits this offense. This feels more like it should go towards 40, 44. I don't, unless there's something that I'm significantly missing. Like, how does this game go up? Right? Like, which way is it more likely to go?
We do have teams on the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Like the Colts are like a dead nut over team, in my opinion,
They are.
right?
Yeah.
Like they are. That they are going to play high scoring games because they have a quarterback that turns it over a lot, that creates chaos, short fields for other teams, even defensive scores. The last 3 Colts games, the lowest total points in any of those games is 57. They've played a lot. They've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their 8 games have finished in the 50s this year. So like,
It's true. One
it
of
is
which against
scary.
Cleveland last week too. That's yeah.
Maybe
You
I'm out
bring up
to
a good
maybe I'm out to lunch a little bit here, and maybe like I didn't realize how much the Colts are are how chaotic that team can be.
Yeah, maybe this is one of those, like you said, like dead over, dead under. I mean, Jacksonville 57 points that game total. The only game under 40 was against Tennessee that they won. Yeah, I mean, that you make a very fair point. I certainly don't feel strongly about it. I have a hard time believing this number goes up to 46 or 46 and a half. What do we think
I
about the side? I mean, I think
I so like my thoughts again are this. When I watched Carolina play today, I said to myself, if this team wins this game today, I'd really like to find a way to bet against them this week. But now seeing this number, I don't want to bet the Colts to win by 4 on the road. Like hard pass.
yeah, like the number feels right. Like it
Yeah.
really does.
Like if anything, I kind of feel like Carolina might take some money in this game. Oddly.
Well, yeah, I mean, even so, Houston today closed at 3.5 even or 3 minus 120, like depending on where you're looking.
Yeah.
Um, Indy and Houston are probably around the same market rating. I think Indy's a little bit worse. And I'm talking about like not just what's happening with Houston every week. I think there might be even some interest at Carolina at 2.5, like you're saying.
Well, what happened with the Indy Cleveland game last week from a betting perspective? Because obviously there was one-way action towards New Orleans this week.
So things went back and forth because of Deshaun Watson, right? Like whether or not he was going to play. Um, Cleveland
Right.
at Pinnacle opened -2.
And then got
It
bet up.
closed, yeah, -3.5
Yeah. Yeah. Tough one. I don't know.
with a total of like 39 or something, if I remember correctly. 40.5, but I think it opened at 39. Yes, it did. It opened 39 juice to the under. So once Deshaun Watson was supposedly playing, that helped, move the number past 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't honestly know. I don't know, people. My initial gut feeling was this number feels high for a Carolina game, but after digging into it a little bit more, man, Indy has played some just absolute massive scoring games. So I don't know. No strong opinion there. No strong opinion. All right. It's not Sunday night football next week, I don't believe. I think it's just a late afternoon game. It is. I could say should be a good game, even though I'm a Cowboys fan. Should be a good game. I think people will be looking forward to the Cowboys heading out on the road to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Market, Philly -3. Totals 46.5, heavily juiced towards the over. That's trending to be a 47 right now. Eagles -3, total 47. I was completely off on the Cowboys game today, as I mentioned at the top of the show. I'm having trouble, I think, valuing the Cowboys right now. They scored a lot on defense. There's another pick six today. There was a blocked punt for a safety today, which we didn't even talk about, Clive. I think the Eagles are better than them, but I don't.
I do.
But I feel like 3 is fair, right?
Yeah, I mean, be hard pressed to get this number to 3.5. Like if somebody tells me it closes 3 minus 20, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That just feels right to me. Without digging into like matchup stuff, you brought up a point that I was going to bring up too. Like it's so hard to gauge the Dallas defense and what they are because they've had a couple of games now with some significant scores on defense and just almost wrecking the game early and just changing the game state. I don't know that you're going to get that against Philly. So this is a step up in class for sure on the road. At the market number, I have some interest in Philly, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Yeah. So if we go back to last year, was the first game, I'm trying to remember if the first game was a Cooper Cup game. Not Cooper Cup, Cooper Rush. I think it was. I don't think, like, we haven't seen the Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott game because last year, the 2 times they played, the first one was Cooper Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time they played was the Gardner Minshew game. It was the Christmas Eve game, 40-34. I remember the game vividly. There's like just no defense. I actually don't even know how Dallas covered the game at that point or another. So we don't really have any priors of these teams playing one another. What do you have Dallas versus Miami on a neutral right now?
Dallas a half to a point, like in between.
I have them very close as well. Very close. Yeah, Hurts is clearly injury hampered. Is hurt his EPA a little bit this year. They're finding ways to win and cover games. I honestly, like, to me, this is going to be digging deep into the matchup one way or another and seeing if I can uncover anything. 3 to me is a fine number. The step up in class that Dallas had on the road this year was when they went to San Fran, Sunday Night Football, -3.5. A team that's built very similarly to Philly, in my opinion, and they just got obliterated in that game. I would love, as a Cowboys fan, for the Cowboys to win this game and put in an impressive performance. Subjectively, I feel like this is fine.
Yeah, I do look forward to seeing. I mean, AJ Brown looked really good today. What was his EPA today? Wow,
Yeah, he was
ridiculous.
off the charts.
Yeah, and Devontae Smith was good again today. Minus a couple of fumbles, the game probably maybe is a little bit more of a blowout, I think. Yep. I don't know. I think I'm just actually looking forward to watching this game. I kind of have to think about the total a little bit. Instinctively, I want to say that it goes up, but I don't feel like that's right either. Like I'm just looking at numbers and thinking like 47, 47 and a half, but I don't know that when I dig into the game that that's true. Am I making any sense?
My first instinct on seeing the 46, I granted the 46 and a half is like really a 47.
Yeah.
My first instinct was that I thought it was a little bit low personally.
Yeah. I just
But
don't I don't know if when I look past that, if I'm going to believe that I want to take 46 and a half, even if I know the number's going to 47, hypothetically.
it really depends on the Dallas offensive game plan. The Eagles have a lot of downfield potential. Like they're an explosive team. They throw downfield a lot. They complete downfield a lot. Like those are the types of teams I want if I'm going to bet an over. Dallas is like sometimes they give you this game plan where it's like heavy run, everything underneath, screen passes. Today they threw downfield a lot, but the Rams were dealing with some cornerback injuries throughout the game as well. I
kind of feel
I'm having a
bad that
tough
we don't
time.
have a lot of like strong feelings about like where these games are going to go. Like this last week, we had a few, right? Like that were pretty clear.
Yeah,
I think with all the backup quarterbacks, injuries, all that stuff, like it's just really hard to take a stand on any of this.
it really is. I'm with you. It looks like a challenging week in the early going here. At least, especially like a lot of unknown right now. That's hard to navigate through. Typically speaking, you play the early news and the lines will move that way. But with the trade deadline lurking, with some of these openers being honestly pretty solid, I'm not sure. I'm not sure entirely. Scott asked, has there been an update on Jalen Carter after he left the game? I believe they said he has a tailbone injury or a back injury, but they didn't provide any sort of status. Daniel says McCarthy is a cuck against good teams. This is kind of what I'm falling back on right now. Like
Yeah.
every time Dallas has stepped up in class in the McCarthy regime, they've blown it. They've lost.
And we haven't necessarily seen Philly shit the bed. They actually step up. So even a good offense like Miami did not look particularly effective against the
I'm with you.
Eagles.
I'm with you. Before we get into the last game here, and then our thoughts on some games that aren't on the board, really quickly, there's 200 plus watching right now. We got 85 likes. Less than half of the people watching have liked the stream. Take 2 seconds, smash that like button down below. It does really help us out a lot. For those of you who are listening after the fact, maybe not tuning in until after Sunday Night Football or maybe on Monday on the way to work or whatever, appreciate your support as well. If you could let other people know about this, be much appreciated as well. It would be much appreciated. All right. Final game. This is a good one. Sunday Night Football next week. While we're on air, Clive, it'll be the Cincinnati Bengals hosting the Buffalo Bills. The Bengals minus 2.5, the total 47. Okay, there is a lot to unpack with this game because this has the classic narrative. I don't want to call it a narrative. It's not a narrative because there's certainly been a massive correction from last week to this, right? This has the classic, I don't even want to call it like fake sharp reaction, but there's going to be a lot of people next week who are going to bet the Bills and say, it's an overcorrection. Bengals coming off a great game, time to fade them, jump off. There's a few things that stand out for me, but one of them is that the Bengals bossed the Bills last year in the playoffs. In the game where Damar Hamlin basically at one point died on the field, the Bengals were playing very well in that game as well. I am a styles make fights type of guy. I get it. I don't think Buffalo is nearly as bad, like as people are claiming that they are. Buffalo's broken. They'll never win with Josh Allen and whatever. I get that. I ultimately think the market will move towards Buffalo just because there's still so much uncertainty.
Anti-Cincy sentiment. Yeah.
So I think if you like Buffalo, you bet it now. Personally, I don't think we get to 3. I really don't. But my first instinct on this game was like, hopefully we get some early Buffalo money and I can come in on Cincy at a better price later on. That was my first instinct.
Yeah. I could see this getting all the way to Cincy -1 early.
Yep.
So completely on board with what you just said about, like, if you like Buffalo and you can get 2.5, get it now. I don't think this game closes like to 3, so I don't think it gets to that point where waiting is beneficial. That's just me.
Second thing I'm going to say in regards to this game, total of 47 looks low to me. I actually don't think that there's that many problems with the Bills offense. I really don't.
No.
The Bills had a very efficient game against the Bucs. Like, not their best game, but it was efficient. 53% success rate. They went 2 of 4 in the red zone. Bengals offense, like I said, you might as well throw out the stuff from the beginning of the year. Honestly, what is the point of using that data? What is the point of using the data points where Joe Burrow was hobbling? Did you watch Joe Burrow today? He was scrapped. They had designed runs for Joe Burrow today where he's picking up like 15 yards. Like, what is the point of using that data? There is the whole primetime unders and whatever that a lot of people put stock into. And a lot of these primetime games do get bet towards the under. But I 47 with the Bills and Bengals offenses. And the injuries on the Bills defense, I'm sorry.
I agree with you. Like, if you go from week 5 forward, look at rbsdm.com, right? Like their EPA tiers. Take week 5 on. Bengals, top right. Like, furthest top right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's like, where do we draw the line? Because I love games like this. This is fascinating because all year long you could have never got to this price at any point in the season, whether it was week 1, whatever point in the season, the price in this game was never going to be Cincy -2.5. So from that point, it's like peak market value for the Bengals. But is it? Like, I know they just walked into San Fran and beat San Fran. San Fran without Trent Williams, without Deebo Samuel. Maybe the Bengals are just really damn good.
Listen, I was high on them coming into the season. And then, you had the Burrow injury, and then what are you going to do? You got to let the games play out. But when he's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you go. Now move it back and go all the way from
weeks 5 to 8 right here.
Yep. So go to 0 and look where the Bengals shift to.
So they're upper right now.
Yeah.
And if we go back to the beginning of the season, yeah, they're going to be like more neutral, probably right in
left.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
With the games that they've just had, with the games that they had against San Francisco, and that's in there. So that's how bad, when you look at things in aggregate, it just completely skews things. You have to decide where that line is, and then to your point, styles make fights, right? Like, what does this particular matchup look like? If I see a 46.5 in market for this game, I would absolutely jump on it.
Yeah. Seeing some market movement already to the over, and that makes sense. This reminds me of this reminds me of a game from a few years ago, and it's not apples to apples. So but it involved the Bills, and the Bills were on the opposite end of the spectrum in this game. The game was Bills-Steelers. It was a year where the Steelers were outperforming expectations. I believe the Steelers lost in the first round of the playoffs to the Browns. They got blown out by Baker Mayfield and the Browns. But there was a very similar type of game where there was a huge correction from one week to another. And everyone was betting against the Bills that week. They were betting the Steelers in that game. And I felt like I was on a lonely island. I'm like, I felt like it was me against the world. It was like, oh, a huge correction. and Daniel has it right here in the chat, right? Steelers open -3 and close +3 or whatever. Maybe it was the other way around, something like that. I think it was the other way around. I
Yeah, I
think
mean, based on what you're saying, it would have to be.
I think it was the other way around, unless I'm confusing it. But I'm pretty sure it was that game where everyone was betting the Steelers, and I'm like, what are people seeing? Like the Bills are clearly miles better than the Steelers. Who cares what the line was a week ago? Like, why do we care about that? I remember that because I won that bet. But this, and it's not that I actually really like the Bills, but the matchup, like the styles of the way that these teams play, since he was moving the ball up and down every possession last year against the Bills, that was a good Bills defense. They were moving the ball up and down the field on them
at will, like completely, whatever they wanted to do.
And that's what the Bengals offense reminded me of today. It was just like another level. And maybe I'm going to be the idiot. And honestly, I can't even say I'm going to, like, I don't even know what my number is going to be when I run this on Tuesday. I might run, because I'm actually a little bit higher than market on the Bills still, too. But yeah, that total is definitely low. In terms of the game, I'm not sure yet.
I think it's, like you said, it looks like it's already moving.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. That's why we encourage people to watch us live here on Forward Progress on Sunday nights. Get the early numbers. We recapped it earlier in the show, courtesy of Scott. We do a decent job, I'd say. This week, not so many plays, but it is what it is.
Not a lot of clear cuts, yeah.
Only other game so not on the board was the Rams and the Packers. And that's due to Matthew Stafford, who left today's game. Thumb injury.
Smashed it on a helmet. Yeah, that looked rough.
You know what? I ranted about this at the beginning of the show. Might as well close the show with this as well. Did it not also feel like if Stafford stayed in the game, they were going to
we weren't dead? Yeah, it did not feel like we were dead. It did not feel like we were dead.
It sounds so ridiculous for me to say this stuff because like the Cowboys destroyed the Rams today, but that first drive, illegal hands to the face penalty, plus Stafford getting hurt, it just felt like everything worked against us.
I forget the actual number. I think it got to 33-16 or something like that. I don't remember the actual number. And then I think it was the next drive after that Rippon came in, and it broke my heart a little bit. I'm like, I kind of felt like I had a shot at like a backdoor cover here. Not a big one, but I felt like I had something to sweat, and then it stole my soul.
So Mark says at some other books it's a pick 'em right now, Packers Rams. Honestly, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but it does feel like Stafford is very unlikely to be healthy next week, based off the fact that he didn't. I don't know. I've seen some early bets into accounts on Green Bay so far at this price, and I don't know, man. That offense is just, Jordan Love is just broken. Like, are we convinced that Jordan Love is better than Brett Rippon? Rippon sucks, but like Love also sucks.
Yeah, you're not hearing a lot from those Jordan Love truthers from the beginning of the season that thought Green Bay was going to be, absolutely amazing. I wasn't sold on him. That doesn't mean that he still can't get better. I'm looking at the total at some of these other books too, and they seem almost a little high.
Yeah.
I mean, Vikings Packers today closed at 41.5, and I don't see the Rams as being better necessarily to warrant a similar number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay slight favorite. I mean, I look at these teams as pretty close. Like on a neutral, without nitpicking, even feels right.
Yep.
Maybe LA slight, but that was before this week without Stafford.
Yep. Green Bay pick next week will be my most disgusting bet, says Gauntlet. I'll pray for you, Gauntlet. I don't know that I will want to do that. Dinger says, how do you see what other people are betting into accounts? Two ways. One, they're using my accounts. Or two, I'm just following people on BetStamp that I know have some sort of long-term proven track record or market influence. So those are the two ways that I see it. Chosen Sports. Any reason you don't run your numbers immediately and wait until Tuesday? Yes. I work with a larger group of people where we need a certain bet size in order for it to make it worthwhile for us to bet it. Because of that, it's not worth it. Second reason, some of our data sources are not ready by Sunday night and takes into Monday. Plus, there's a little bit of a subjective element of watching games on Monday as well. So those are the reasons. Everyone has their own process. That's just the one that works for me. Two other games, we're not going to get into them. It's the Giants and the Raiders. Danny DeVito, son, Tommy DeVito, was that quarterback, I think, today. Frank
Nothing
Reynolds.
more Jersey than that name.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito. Yeah, we don't know. And then Chicago, New Orleans, no sense getting into that now with Chicago playing Sunday night football. Appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. As a reminder, we do have live content on Forward Progress every single weekday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern time, it's G-Stack George. He's going to be excited because his Dolphins won. Cleve TA, Fabian Sommer. We'll see what they're cooking up tomorrow on Forward Progress at 2 p.m. Eastern time. But they'll look at this week that was. Maybe you'll get a Monday Night Football play from George. He gave out Vikings last week, one outright. Maybe you'll get one. On your way out the door, make sure you do smash that like button down below. Make sure you're subscribed here on Forward Progress. And like I said, if you could help us grow the channel, please do so. I know you guys are big believers in what we do here, or else you wouldn't be in here for every single stream. So whoever you got in your inner circle, say, hey, there's some guys here that put out some weekly content on Forward Progress. Check out their YouTube channel. Help us get some subs. For myself, Rob Pizzola, for Clive Bixby, for a producer behind the scenes, Jason Cooper, thank you for getting those Cincinnati Bengals metrics up on screen here for the broadcast. This has been another edition of Forward Progress. Enjoy the rest of Sunday Night Football, and we'll catch you this week here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel.